In this video, I'm going to solve the equation 12x squared equals 66x minus 72. So the first thing that we should do is get a zero on one side of this equation. Whether you're going to solve by factoring or possibly use the quadratic formula, either one of those methods, you want to have a zero on one side. So I will start by subtracting 66x from both sides and adding 72. I prefer to keep the squared term positive. That tends to make these expressions easier to factor when the squared term is positive. So I'm going to do the same thing to both sides. So subtract 66x and add 72 so that the left-hand side of this equation becomes 12x squared minus 66x plus 72 equals 0. Now, something else to note, just looking across this equation, is that everything is divisible by 6. We have these are all multiples of 6, the 12, 66, and 72. So it would also be helpful to divide both sides of this equation by 6. If you happen to notice a constant common multiple across your equation, then it's helpful to divide that out before we do anything else, just to get the numbers a little smaller and more manageable. So on the left side, make sure that you divide each part by 6. So 12 divided by 6 leaves us with 2x squared. 66 divided by 6, so now this is minus 11x. And 72 divided by 6 is 12. Equals 0 divided by 6 is 0. Now, if I want to consider solving this by factoring, then I need to find two numbers whose product is a times c. That's the way I think about this. So the AC method is what it's sometimes called. I use this AC method when the coefficient of x squared is not 1. So if we have something other than x squared here, then that's when you might consider using this AC method. So the deal here is we need to find two numbers whose product is a times c, which in this case is 2 times 12, so 24. Two numbers whose product is 24 and whose sum is b in the middle, which in this problem is negative 11. So two numbers that multiply to give us positive 24 and add up to negative 11. So the two magic numbers there are negative 3 and negative 8. When you multiply them, you get positive 24. When you add them, you get negative 11. Now, with the AC method, the way this works is you take this middle term, so the minus 11x, and you expand it into two separate terms using these two numbers that we just found over here. So instead of writing minus 11x, I'm going to write this as minus 3x minus 8x. So that's still equal to negative 11x. And I'll leave these other terms the way they were. So we have the 2x squared in front and the plus 12 in the back equals 0. Now, with the AC method, you should be able to factor by grouping. So consider, okay, what can I factor out of these first two terms? What's my common factor across the first two terms here? And that would just be x. We can factor x out of the first two terms, and that would leave 2x minus 3 here. Then you look at the second two terms. Now, when you have a minus in the middle here, this negative, you should factor that out. So I could consider other common factors. Well, they're both multiples of 4. So I'm going to factor out negative 4 from the second two terms here. So if I factor out negative 4, I'm left with 2x here. If I factor out negative 4 from the 12, I'm left with negative 3. Keep in mind that when I'm filling in these spaces here, you can, if I'm factoring out negative 4, you can think of it as dividing by negative 4 to see what's left. So negative 8x, if I divide by negative 4, leaves me with positive 2x. And 12, if I divide by negative 4, leaves me with negative 3. Now, what we need to notice now, this is what you're hoping for, is that these two factors match. That tells us that factoring by grouping is going to work. If I pull out this common factor of 2x minus 3, then what's left is x from here minus 4 from the second part of this equals 0. So now we've got this thing factored. It never hurts to double check. So to foil what I wrote here, let me see. So this would be 2x squared minus 8x minus 3x gives me this negative 11x plus 12. So that looks good. It's equal to what's up above. So now last thing we need to do in order to solve this thing is set each factor equal to 0. So if you set that 2x minus 3 factor equal to 0, then you can move the 3 over, 2x equals 3, divide both sides by 2, and there's your answer. 3 halves is one solution. The other solution, sorry I'm using the corner of the board here, but x minus 4, there's your other factor, equals 0. If you add 4 to both sides of that equation, you get x equals 4. So our final answer, our solution set, if we want to write it in the fancy brackets there, our solution set is 3 halves and 4.